Hello and welcome to Dyclif Dygest. I know it's been a while. I basically took a mini vacation from this, basically due to the fact that I wanted to kind of reformat the show in a new way instead of just basketball, soccer, and football. There's going to be basically all sports that I want to talk about. So throughout this particular episode, there's going to be MMA, golf, and really that's about it in addition to the basketball, soccer, and football. So let's go ahead and get into it. This first one's kind of a touchy-feely subject, but if you haven't heard, Flip Saunders has Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a form of cancer, but with treatment, it is one of the more curable forms of cancer. So I think, and I hope, that Flip Saunders will get through it. He is president of basketball operations and head coach. It seems to be that the NBA has had, president of basketball operations and head coach sort of tied together, because that's just how the head coach whatever. But basically, back to Flip Saunders' health. I don't think this will really affect him long term, but I do think it might be best for him to maybe step down for a couple months or until this is solved, because this is something you don't want to really stress and cause it to inflame even more. So really, whatever situation he feels best is how he should handle it, and best of luck to him and his recovery at that. Next, we have Mike Scott has been arrested for possessing over 38.2 grams of marijuana. And to go along with that, he is also, I believe it was over 10 grams of MDMA. So, 10.9 grams of MDMA in a vehicle. And he's facing up to 25 years in prison. So, the reason why this is a story for me, something like this normally wouldn't be, but I have a friend who basically religiously watches the NBA draft with me, and we say random stuff like, the 44th pick of this draft is going to be a pretty good player. It just so happens that I said that about Mike Scott, and he was actually doing pretty decent. Like, you figured he might not make the roster, or he might just be bench warmer, but no, he was getting some quality minutes and was actually looking like a pretty good role player for the Atlanta Hawks. And then all of a sudden, he's facing 25 years in prison. So it's not looking good for my prediction in terms. If Mike Scott's guilty of this, he's guilty. But yeah, his NBA career might be done. And when I say might, it's probably more than likely done. So, all I can say is best of luck to you, Mike Scott. That's about it. That's literally it. Next up, we have a sort of a big multi-million-dollar news story, and I'm making this more hyped up than what it's actually is, but James Harden reportedly agrees to a $200 million deal with Adidas, which is kind of huge considering he wore Nike before. I guess Nike's content with having KD and LeBron as sort of their stars for Nike, so Adidas needed this sort of face ever since Derrick Rose's injury. Derrick Rose was a good face to have for Adidas, but whenever he did get injured, that's going to affect shoe sales, and maybe James Harden can illuminate profits for Adidas in their basketball shoe region, because in terms of just selling shoes in general, And this is a dollar share chart. That's hard to say. Nike and Jordan combined have 58%. Skechers has 5%. New Balance has 5%. Asics has 4%. And Adidas has 4%. So Adidas needed to make a big-time move. And they got what they were looking for, James Harden. A lot of it has to do with how good someone can actually play, too. So this actually puts some pressure on James Harden to be the face of Adidas and to actually perform at a high level. So we'll see how that turns out. I'm not too sure about it. It's just another shoe deal. So, good for James Harden, good for Adidas, good for America, good for the world, good for Earth. Maybe. We'll see. Next up, we have the NBA schedule and some of the more important games. So, opening night, we just have the Pistons and Hawks, Bulls and Cavs, Warriors and Pelicans. Personally, Bulls and Cavs is a big one, and Warriors and Pelicans is a pretty big one, considering the circumstance. The 1-8 seed last year in the Western Conference Finals, and then you have the Bulls and Cavs, the Eastern Conference Finals. No, it wasn't the Eastern Conference Finals. It was the Eastern Conference Semifinals. It just seemed like the Eastern Conference Finals. So, between those two games, the Pistons and Hawks, it is what it is. I won't be watching it. I'll probably watch the highlights of that one. But Bulls and Cavs should be interesting. Maybe the two best teams in the East squaring off. Warriors and Pelicans, Anthony Davis, Steph Curry, two very prestigious players in the NBA right now. Should be very interesting. And speaking of even more interesting, we have NBA Christmas Day, which Pelicans Heat, so another Pelicans involvement there, not only on opening day but on Christmas Day. And the Heat also could be a top 5 team in the East easily, so that should be a pretty good game. Bulls and Thunder, top. It's hard to say what the Thunder are going to be able to do, but we'll see. That's a 2:30 game, p.m. Eastern time, that is. I don't know why I even mentioned that, because if you get someone viewing from another country or another time zone, it just screws them all over. So it would kind of, in a way, make sense just to put everything at the same time, like not actually have time zones, but I get why they have time zones. That's a different story for a different day. Cavs, Warriors, finals rematch. Don't really need to say anything about that. Spurs, Rockets. Very interesting considering the circumstances. A good old Texas shootout. Lakers and Clippers. That could be interesting. It's the Battle of LA. That's probably what they'll hype it as. So, it depends if Kobe's healthy. Randall's healthy. D'Angelo Russell. I fully expect the Clippers to win that game, though. So, and then we have basically just the 10 best games. I'm just going to do a couple of them. We have the Clippers and Mavericks, which is on this website that I'm looking at right now, has them ranked at number 1, which I can kind of understand. You have the DeAndre Jordan debacle. So, really interesting to see how that's going to turn out. And basically, all the rest of those are just former players playing against former teams or two teams that are clashing, so I'm not really going to cover that much. But if you are interested, Clippers and Mavericks, November 11th, that would definitely be a pretty good one to watch. And that's going to do it for the first segment. We are going to move on to a little bit of NFL news next, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Hello and welcome back to the Dyclif Dygest. Basically, preseason football is here. I really haven't watched much, if at all. I typically am only interested in football whenever it's leading up to the fantasy football draft that I have. And once football's kind of over, I kind of fall out of it. Basketball and soccer is a little bit different. That's more of almost an all year thing. But I don't know why it is the way for NFL. But the main story I wanted to touch on just real quick, because I've not touched on it yet, is basically just this Deflategate Tom Brady craziness that has been transpiring for the past 3 months at least, if not more. It's kind of ridiculous. Here's my personal opinion. Okay, the NFL says one thing, Tom Brady says another. We don't know who to trust at this point. It's kind of up in the air. A judge is going to decide this based on the information, the hardcore facts. I don't think you're going to find anything that points in the direction of Tom Brady being involved in this. Now, do I think he was involved? I would be willing to bet yes. I can't be 100% for sure, but I would be willing to bet yes. But there's no evidence that I'm aware of against Tom Brady. And if there's no evidence, you cannot say that he's guilty in a court of law. So that's just my 2 cents on it. I'm not going to really touch on it too much. The NFL said that Brady destroyed his phone. Brady said, I just replaced it, because he thought the NFL didn't need information from his phone. So, the NFL's like been in his email. Like, I don't know. It's been public. It's absolutely wild. So, ultimately, I don't think you're going to be able to find him guilty, and I don't think he's going to get a suspension. You can't. Once the decision isn't on the NFL's part, it's on a higher up scale, there's nothing much you can really do about that. So I'm just going to move on. We're actually moving on to our first ever golf segment, and it's something that I didn't think I'd necessarily be talking about. I would eventually think I'd be talking about golf, but the topic. Martin Kaymer apparently tried a Happy Gilmore shot at a long drive competition, and it fared well for him. And here's the thing. People suffer inaccuracy for power and vice versa all the time. It has been proven statistically, sports science on ESPN SportsCenter has proven that a Happy Gilmore drive can actually add distance to a ball because of the momentum of your feet moving forward and more of a general momentum in your swing. So with that added force, it drives the ball farther. So if it's a long drive competition and you can actually hit the ball relatively well while moving, I don't know why you wouldn't do it. So Martin Kaymer, applaud to you, good sir, for Happy Gilmoreing a shot like that, or multiple shots. I didn't really know if he actually competed the whole time like that, but certainly interesting. Certainly an interesting concept. Definitely more to see from golf in the future. Next up, we don't really have a sports topic in general to talk about, but I want to make it generally aware that on Finish Line right now you can select NCAA apparel 2 for $45 and it's free shipping. So definitely check that out if you're wanting like maybe 2 hoodies of your favorite college team. I'm not even sponsored by Finish Line to say that. That's literally just a good deal, I thought. You can get 2 hoodies for basically the price of one. I mean, hoodies are pretty expensive these days, like $35. So 2 for $45 plus free shipping on select NCAA apparel. Go check it out. Next up, we have a little bit of college basketball talk. Well, technically MLB talk too. It's in a weird way. So, in 1995, John Calipari sued the Seattle Mariners for $500,000 over their use of the phrase "refuse to lose." Apparently, the Mariners used it without Calipari's consent, and that was a trademarked phrase of his. And what eventually ended up happening was Calipari settled with the MLB for $6,000. So that's just some random backstory that I never heard before. I'm just wanting to know, like, how many of these stories are out there. Like, that's $6,000. Of course, I was born in 1995, and a story like this, there's no way I could remember it, considering the circumstances. So, but here's the thing: I didn't hear about it ever. Like, I know a lot about Calipari, but I did not know that he sued the Seattle Mariners and had a settlement with the MLB. It's just kind of an amazing little tidbit of information. Just sort of the more you learn out of that. So definitely an interesting story. I'd be interested to learn more about just famous people having past settlements with money, or just a ridiculous story of some sort. It's always interesting to find out. Something that is half college basketball, half high school basketball, half NBA related. There is this Las Vegas pro team, I guess semi-pro basketball team, that is wanting to sort of steal NCAA basketball's top talents. So, instead of going to college, the best high school players in the world can go to this semi-pro team and play like a circuit and still have the NBA under their radar, but they don't have to go to school. So this could be a good option for one and dones, although I have not heard anyone yet really consider this as an option. I know that Jamal Murray turned down 6 figures to go to Kentucky, so that's one thing, but I've not heard any others sort of decline or anything like that. I haven't really discovered that much into it, but it's definitely interesting. Emmanuel Mudiay went to China, and there's been many in the past, Brandon Jennings. So this seems like a pretty good option if I'm honest. Basically, if you have the skills necessary to perform at this level and you do not want to go to college, this easily is another option. Because not only do you not have to go to college, you literally get paid, $500,000, $750,000, maybe even over $1 million, depending on who you are and what you've done in high school. So, it's an option. Do I think they'll steal the talent away of the NCAA? Not incredibly. Not an incredible amount. I think there'll be some within the next coming years, but it's not going to be, 5 of the top 10 players. It might be 1 or 2 top 10 players, if that. So, just another thing to look out for in general. Now we're moving on to a little bit of soccer-related news in the MLS, and this is something that really interested me. It was basically the different ways that the two clubs that I'm about to analyze spend in the MLS. So at the top of the table in the MLS, we have DC United, and I believe in 8th right now as I'm saying this is New York City FC. And if you take into consideration, DC United has probably spent less than $1 million or right around that. Couldn't be over $3 million on incoming players and incoming talents that they get really young talents. And then you have New York City FC, who's brought in over $15 million's worth. And we have a difference of DC United being first and New York City being 8th. And that, it's kind of shocking to me, but in a way it's not. And I'll tell you why. it's not that shocking because New York City's sort of a newer club, and they're just getting used to chemistry, whereas DC United has had a group of players that have been around for a while. They haven't, they make moves, but maybe not as much as some other teams. But it's kind of ridiculous. They're, at the time I'm reading this, 44 points compared to the Red Bulls 36 and the Columbus Crews 34. So they are in clear-cut condition to proceed to win the MLS regular season. In terms of the Eastern Conference, this is just the Eastern Conference. I should definitely clarify on that. That's just the Eastern Conference. That does not include the Western Conference. But overall, they are leading the whole MLS in points in general. So it's just amazing to see the differences in the spendings of two teams, but maybe just different styles and different minds of thinking will get you to different places. And that's what I wanted to point out. It's not always about spending big, aiming big, and achieving big. It could be about spending low and setting your expectations high and just seeing what happens. So it's a good lesson. I thought I'd entertain the idea of it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Moving on from there, I really don't want to cover much of Barclays Premier League Week 1 that much, but I will sort of hint at it a little bit. I wanted to cover some of the summer transfers that happened within the BPL, maybe La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and some other leagues if possible. Petr Cech from Chelsea to Arsenal, obviously a pretty big one. Didn't have that good of a debut, but I do expect him to get into good form. He hasn't seen a lot of game time, like actual game time, in a while, so we'll give him a little bit of time. We'll give Arsenal a little bit of time. We'll see what happens. Falcao's an interesting one, from Monaco to Manchester United to Chelsea. It may be a good backup striker for them, but I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what exactly is Monaco doing, loaning him out. I never really understood that. If anyone could clarify that, I'd appreciate it. Monaco basically loaning him to Manchester United, then there's some sort of loan deal in place. Is it like a paid loan? Like you just pay to have him for that year and not exactly buy him outright? I just don't get it. I don't get it. Asmir Begovic from Stoke to Chelsea. Stoke lost a pretty good goalkeeper, and I guess Begovic just wanted the trophies and the prestigious honor of playing at one of the best BPL clubs there is. So we have Johan Cabaye, which I think is a big move from PSG to Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace could be a top 7 team. I see them right around 7th. Definitely a force to be reckoned with in the future. They have a lot of young talent, and definitely look out for them in the future. Danny Ings from Burnley to Liverpool. It's nice to see that he's stepping up to a larger club. We'll see what he can do. James Milner from Manchester City to Liverpool. Very interesting. He just, I believe that was they got him on a free contract. So, it's not a free contract, but you get what I'm saying, without paying another club. So that's definitely a good thing. Nathaniel Klein from Southampton to Liverpool, another big one. Liverpool making some decent signings, I will say. You have Roberto Firmino from Hoffenheim to Liverpool. Benteke, Aston Villa to Liverpool. They're making some good moves, and they need to keep it going. That's all I gotta say. Raheem Sterling, Liverpool to Man City. Don't know why Man City did that. I don't think they needed to do that. Nearly $70 million for Raheem Sterling. Liverpool can't say no to that, obviously. Sergio Romero from Sampdoria to Manchester United. Personally, I think this is a big one because, De Gea, it's looking like he's on his way out. And Sergio Romero, in my personal opinion, is one of the most underrated goalkeepers possibly in the world right now. The work that he did for Argentina in the World Cup was absolutely ridiculous. Again, that one Mario Götze goal in the World Cup final is going to haunt him for a while. There's not much he could have done about it, to be honest with you. There's only so much a goalkeeper can do, but it's still going to haunt him. Either way, I think it's a good buy for Manchester United, considering they picked him up on a free contract. So, excellent signing. Morgan Schneiderlin, Manchester United's been scoping this guy out for a while from Southampton, and they finally got him. I think he's a good holding mid. Definitely a plus. And then this next one, I did not expect in the slightest. Bastian Schweinsteiger from Bayern Munich to Manchester United. I was not expecting that at all, but still great signing. And then possibly one of the largest transfers possibly this summer is Memphis Depay from PSV to Manchester United. A huge signing for Manchester United, especially if Depay can live up to his future potential. It's going to be something to behold. I'm really curious to see what he's capable of exactly. It should definitely be interesting to see. One to think about is Ibrahim Afellay, and if you don't know him, he's a winger. I consider him a winger, but he can play midfield. From Barcelona to Stoke on a free contract. I guess Barcelona did not want to re-up this guy and re-sign him for next season, so Stoke was stoked to sign him for free, I'll tell you that. Another thing for Stoke is Shaqiri is now a Stoke player. Recently, Bayern Munich to Milan to Stoke. Shaqiri's going to be an X factor for Stoke. I can easily see Stoke City finishing top 8. It's kind of weird. Like it can juggle a lot. There's a lot of I wouldn't say mid-table because, there's 20 teams. So mid would be about 10. I'm talking intermediate table, if that's even a phrase. Like I consider intermediate to be 6, 7, 8, 9. And I see Stoke, Southampton, and a few others in that area, like Crystal Palace, all jam-packed in that area. So, next, I'm only covering the ones that I feel are going to be huge or just I feel is going to be important to talk about in general. One guy that I think is very underrated, I've seen a lot of him, and I think Swansea, another one of those intermediate tables, got a good pickup with Eder as a striker from Sporting Braga. Only 7.5 million, very good signing. He's Portuguese, very physical, very fast up front to pair with Gomez. Just a good signing. I got to give him a pat on the back for that. Swansea also able to get Andre Ayew for free from Marseille. Great moves. Great moves all around the BPL. And Watford, I have to say, made a ton of signings of people I don't really know, to be honest with you. So I'm not even really going to go over it, but they've made at least 10 signings. And I think that'll just about do it, besides Dimitri Payet from Marseille to West Ham. West Ham also making moves. But Payet, man, I think he can potentially be one of the best center attacking midfielders in the BPL this season, and he's very young. Maybe not this season, but he'll definitely grow into it. He really is a great talent, and he can set up people. So look out for this guy is all I've got to say. That's all I've got to say. Next up, we have Reebok and the UFC. Here comes some UFC talk. So the UFC is going to get 15% of Reebok kit sales, and fighters are going to get 20% of that 15% percentage. So fighters get, let's say, $3 on a $100 kit. Here's the debate, and we can debate this forever. Would they get more money from their own sponsors or by Reebok? Well, it depends on the fighter. This can help out some of the lower name fighters, and this could hurt some of the larger name fighters. Also, Reebok, not taking a shot at them or anything, but they're not a Nike. They're not an Adidas. They're not an Under Armour. They're a little bit below. And they're making a move to sort of climb up the ladder. I get that. But we have seen a few malfunctions in wardrobe with Reebok. I think there's been at least 2 that I'm aware of in the UFC, and it's not been good. Maybe it's just sort of a misfit with a few people sitting in the wrong gear and stuff. But, I'm going to let that slide. If it's good quality material and the fighters are happy and the UFC is happy and Reebok is happy, I don't see why that it's going to be a problem. But it just depends. Like, it's one of those things I really don't even have an opinion on. Like, it's totally up to the 3 elements, and the 3 elements that I mentioned. So there's not a whole lot to say here. Let's just sit back and watch this story unfold. And speaking of a story unfolding, Ronda Rousey was asked on Reddit in an Ask Me Anything who would win in a fight between Floyd Mayweather and Ronda Rousey. If you don't know, there's been some, I don't want to say like necessarily trash talk, although that's probably what it is, between Rousey and Mayweather. And if you want to do some background research, I'm sure there's something out there. Just Google Mayweather Rousey full story trash talk or something along those lines. There are websites out there that will give you every single detail about their back and forth engagement. But anyways, she thinks that he would definitely beat her in a boxing match, but in a no-rule fight, just an MMA fight, Ronda believes that she can beat anyone on this planet. So, speaking very highly of herself, this is something crazy, okay? Now, obviously, I gotta point this out. Like, I gotta point out the obvious. It's a man and a woman. Do I think Ronda Rousey can beat Floyd Mayweather in a standard MMA fight? I do think there are occasions that she could win. Like, if you say Ronda can't win 1 out of 100, I think you're stretching it. Like a 1% chance, really. I think it's a lot greater than that. Consider the fact that Floyd Mayweather is 5'8", 5'9", around that region, doesn't weigh a whole lot, and only knows boxing. Ronda Rousey might have the advantage here. Obviously, reach is going to be a problem. and general face-to-face confrontation is going to be a problem. But Floyd, to my knowledge, really hasn't had to defend himself in terms of being took down to the ground. Like, there's so many different elements in the MMA that we don't see in boxing. You have the clinch, you have the ground and pound, you have submissions, something that Rousey is very, very adept at. So, I would say Mayweather would win probably 58 out of 100 fights. Give or take. I think Rousey could do it, but she would not be the favorite by any means. So that's my personal opinion on it. That was the last topic I had to discuss, so I'm going to go and end it there. Pretty good list of topics for today. Definitely tell me how this new system has worked in terms of more sports. I think it's a nice breath of fresh air to talk about different sports and my opinions on it. So hope you guys have enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.